Matthew Macfadyen, I have to ask, I read that when you got the role, when you were considering the role of Henry Wilcox on
Yeah.
Howard's End, you initially had some hesitation about taking it. Is that true? And what was causing that hesitation?
The thing that was causing the hesitation was just the period, doing another period piece. But the hesitation lasted for about 3 seconds. Well, no, it lasted. I started reading it, and then it was such an enticing, wonderful read that any doubts I had went out the window. I'd done quite a lot of period stuff and Victorian, Edwardian gentlemen, and all the rest of it. So in my head, I was planning to do something different. But this was so wonderful that it was a no-brainer.
And it's interesting because this is such a famous British novel by Ian Forster. Was it surprising to you to have somebody like Kenneth Lonnegan adapt it? And what do you think he brought to the script?
Well, no, not really. He's just a wonderful writer. I don't think he needs to. It's literature, so he's so clever, and I think he brought a real. I don't know. I sort of feel like he brought a lack of sentimentality towards it, or a lack of reverence. Maybe he's quoted as saying that it's not his favorite novel, and he had a few hesitations about before he embarked on the adaptation. So that's probably quite a good thing. It wasn't a sort of it wasn't overly reverential, and he was able to. And also, he had. We're shooting 4 hours of it, so it was sort of a wonderful opportunity to really make the most of it, and put a lot back in that you couldn't say in the film version, for example.
Yeah, and speaking of that film version, you of course come from the theater, and this particular film version, so iconic with Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins. Yeah. Did that give you any pause about jumping into a part played by somebody else? It probably shouldn't, considering that in the theater, you play parts that have been played by other people all the time. So was it different approaching this as a longer series?
No, I mean it's really just thrilling to be playing the parts that they played, and being involved with a. It's a little daunting, but not really. It's sort of more exciting than daunting. And there's a long gap. I think it was over 20 years. I remember seeing it just before I went to drama school. So yeah, it's great to sort of walk in their footsteps, so to speak. And also it does feel having that time to really explore the characters and tell the story in a fuller way is exciting. It's great.
How does this adaptation treat Henry Wilcox? I mean, he's seen, particularly in the original film, he's very kind of stuffy upper crust, but I felt like there was way more dimension to him in your Henry Wilcox. Is that just due to the length of time, or is there something specific that Kenneth Lonnegan touched on in the script in developing Henry?
I don't know. I think he's. I mean, Margaret's got to find him attractive, and she's got to. I mean, he's not a bad man. He's not a. I found him very sympathetic in some ways. I found him maddening in some ways as well. But he thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's doing the honourable thing, and so I don't know. It's probably a bit of me and a bit of what I saw in him and a bit of the way Hetty MacDonald, our director, pushed me, perhaps. And yeah, he's not a cold man, Henry. He's quite sort of blocked emotionally, but he's a man of his time. He's yeah.
And some of those scenes. And I think you said one of the most interesting things is that he is a man of his time when there is so much around him that is changing. And some of my favorite scenes were the scenes where you and Haley Atwell, who play Margaret Schlegel, are kind of courting in a sense, and
Yeah.
you go to that specific restaurant where he just seems like a complete fish out of water, and he knows it.
Yeah.
Are those types of scenes, because those are the types of scenes we wouldn't have necessarily seen in the original film?
No.
Is this one of the benefits of being able to do this as a limited series and not just a 2-hour film?
Absolutely. You get to, because inevitably it's just thrilling, because you get to sort of, you're just painting on a bigger canvas, and so you can sort of fill in more of the. But I love that scene at I forget the name of the restaurant, but the vegetarian restaurant, and he's really trying, and that's a very attractive trait in Henry. He really tries, he really tries to open his mind, and he's doing it for her as well. He's being a gentleman, it would be very easy to sort of poo-poo it, and but he really, he's manfully eating his lentil meatballs or whatever they are.
The things we do for love.
This is it.
One of the he is such a changed character by the end.
Yes.
And it's very clear that Margaret has had an impact on him. What do you think is the thing that she brings out in him the most?
I think ultimately she has this wonderful kind of grace, Margaret. She's able to put herself in other people's shoes. She's able to sort of forgive him and understand him, his behavior towards Helen and all the rest of it. And she's able to really sympathize with him not being able to move forward, not being able to understand how to be generous to her. And I think he understands that too, and he sort of accepts it. No, even though his life really, as he knew it, is over, when at the very end he would have, I mean, it would have been the worst tabloid scandal imaginable, that his wife's sister being pregnant with this man, and then his son, the manslaughter verdict, his son murdering really this fast. So I think there is he finds a sort of peace, and I think he understands that, and I find it very moving. The end, he's just there with the little boy, Helen's boy, and Margaret at Howard's End. It's wonderful.
And one of the things, I've always been a huge fan of the book, and one of the things I always look at is that final scene where Henry tells Margaret that, oh yeah, my wife had originally left this play to you the whole time, and Henry asks in a very kind of interesting way, did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you and Haley Atwell had any conversations about, because her answer is always the most interesting to me, about whether or not she forgives him, or whether she just lets it go, or whether she lodges it in her brain.
She forgives him, and it's not important, actually. That's what I mean about her grace and emotional and imaginative intelligence, that she's able to, I mean, I think he genuinely, there's a sort of feeling of, I felt there was a feeling of panic in Henry, when he asks her, did I do wrong? And she takes it away from him and says, no, it's because actually everything's worked out. Everything's happened. So yeah, it's interesting. It's so nuanced. It's so, you can sort of project so much onto it, actually.
And what's interesting with period pieces like this is that you don't often see like the man get a breakdown scene, and Henry just has that magnificent breakdown scene. Talk us through what filming that scene was like. How much was that scene really key for you to prepare for?
I don't really prepare. I mean, I just learn the lines and we rehearse a little bit, but you can't prepare. You just sort of play it and do your best in the playing of it. And I think we shot that quite early on, very early on, like in the third week or something, if my memory serves me right. So that was quite tricky. But when you're working with someone like Haley and Hetty MacDonald, our director, and the script is wonderful, and it all sort of came together, and it just sort of felt right. It was lovely. And Hetty a lot of it is to do with the director allowing us space to find the scene in the moment,
And you of course have worked with Haley several times. I believe this is your third time working together. Does that, knowing particularly that your characters are going to be so intertwined in this journey, does that relationship help you in playing those types of scenes?
Immensely, yeah. There's a shorthand because we're pals and we share a sense of humor, and so there's a sort of you get rid of a lot of. There's a shorthand and a closeness with working together, and you can sort of anticipate. It's lovely. It's lovely. That happens a lot. It's like working with I've been doing this HBO show, and working with people over 10 episodes is wonderfully rewarding because you get to know their idiosyncrasies and watch them building their character, and so it just all feeds into it. It's great.
And I want to talk about that HBO show momentarily, but one of the things about Howard's End is that even though, I mean, it is a piece of a period, it felt to me at least that there's something particularly relevant about what it's saying, particularly now, not just in the terms of, the plight of women in a man's world, also with the issues of class and discussions like that we're having in this country. Do you feel that this is a perfect time for Howard's End to have a new production?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean, it's always a perfect time because the themes are eternally relevant, I'd say. But especially now, and especially when society is thinking very deeply about men and women and how women are treated in society and at work and all the rest of it. It's a wonderful time for it to.
So let's talk about your Succession on HBO comes out on I believe June 3rd. What has been that experience? I don't know what you can say about it, if anything. Who do you play? What's been that working at HBO been like?
Lovely, really good. It's we shot it in Manhattan and a bit in New Mexico and a bit in the UK, which is very nice for me because it's where I live. And it's about a media family. It's about a big, huge media conglomerate. And I play the boyfriend of the daughter of the patriarch of the firm. So and it's good fun. It was really lovely shoot. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch the pilot again. The pilot's a distant memory, but I'm going to watch that again tonight. There's a premiere, and fingers crossed. I think it's good fun. It's funny and dark, and I play this man he's a bit of a dipstick, really.
And that's interesting, because when you look at the characters that you've played up until this point, you said playing another buttoned up English gentleman on Howard's End, you also played the role on Ripper Street, which was an absolutely terrific show. I hope that comes back. But
there's a lot of sort of repressed Englishmen, in three-piece suits, and I play a guy from Minnesota who can't stop talking rubbish in shiny suits.
Are those parts, what do you look for now when you look at scripts and you're considering roles? What do you look for? What gets you going?
It's always something different. It's always something. The Succession, the HBO show, sort of ticked all the boxes because it was different in every way. It was, I hadn't done a TV show in the States before, and shooting in New York was exciting, and playing an American was new. I've only done that on stage, so that they were all sort of new things. And so I don't have a plan. I don't know many actors who do. There are lots of actors who say they do, but usually you kind of making it up. We're guns for hire, and you kind of hoping for the best, and it's a big sort of roller coaster ride if you're lucky enough to be on a roller coaster. So I think I try and pick things which are going to be exciting and challenging, and I've been very lucky. So yeah, I think I start worrying if I'm doing the same thing. Not worrying, but I start feeling a bit stolid and a bit kind of. I get bored of myself, and probably lots of other people do too. So,
at this point in your career, do you still like to balance doing film and TV work with going back to the stage? Do you prefer one over the other?
I don't have a preference. No, I'm feeling a bit itchy to do a play now. Actually, it's been 3 or 4 years, no, 4 or 5 years even. So I feel that I'd like maybe to do one soon, but I don't know what it would be or where. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, Matthew Macfadyen, thank you so much. Congratulations on Howard's End. It's just a spectacular piece, and thank you so much for taking time for me.
Not a bit. All the very best. Most welcome.